Welcome, everyone, to the Festive Tech Calendar 2023. My name is Dan Ray, and I am joined by the wonderful Teresa Cyrus from Pittsburgh. I'm from the Chicagoland area, and we are here to share Santa's secrets to becoming an MVP, a most valuable professional, and mastering public speaking. Teresa, thanks for joining me.
Happy holidays,
Happy
everyone.
holidays.
So, Dan, you and I, we're going to just talk through and answer a lot of people's questions that we get around, becoming an MVP. And so I'll kick it off with the first slide. What is an MVP? So, Dan, I remember I became an MVP in September. Prior to that, I came to you and said, "What is this?" So, what do you want to share?
It's an award, not necessarily an achievement, which I think is something that took me a while to wrap my head around. I always thought of, I became a Microsoft certified trainer in 2000, the year 2000.
Mm,
And I did so by taking the exams that were prerequisites, applying for the program, taking the train the trainer course, which I know you have taken. And,
mm-hmm.
you need, let's say it's four things that you need to do. And by doing those four things, you become a MCT. To become an MVP is really about acting like an MVP and then making sure you're nominated, which is part of the process. And then the most valuable professional award is given typically monthly, and new people are brought into the program on a regular basis. So you found out in September, um, the award found you, I guess, is is a good way to think about it.
I think I heard somebody say it best, and I saw it even on Twitter. Don't chase it, right? It's about, doing what you love doing unconditionally. And you'll probably hear me say that again. Microsoft is looking for the best of the best, right? In your area. And we're going to talk about some of that, throughout this course. But again, I thought don't chase it, just do what you love doing, and like you said, they'll find MVP will find you, right? Because it was not part of my plan or mission this year to become an MVP. And but here we are. Here we are.
It's been fun. It was right after you got your MVP that we actually gave this presentation the first time and met in person.
Exactly, exactly. So the other ways, to share your gift, right? What you're passionate about. And it is a variety of things. You can do workshops, you can be, produce video content. That's what I do. I create a lot of videos about Outlook and Microsoft Teams. You can be a conference speaker, podcast, um, it's global. If especially if you're on LinkedIn and sharing your knowledge on LinkedIn, you're going to go global. I know that since I've been MVP or sharing my information on LinkedIn, I probably have 50% US followers and rest of them is international. So it's really, providing your positive impact to others, helping others learn about Microsoft products.
And I think one thing that is interesting about these contribution options or opportunities is many are, the traditional, you have to set aside the time and attend the thing, attend the
Right.
conference or attend the user group or attend a networking event. But many of these, especially with video content and blogging and some of the other broadcasting options, become something that you can collaborate, such as we're doing now.
Right.
For this
Exactly.
to go live on Friday, but we're recording it on Tuesday, just because of time zones and schedules and other types of things.
And even if you remember, I think I met you, right? Networking is really important. I met you at a women's in teens, and I said, "Hey, you have a few minutes to chat." And you introduced me to Microsoft Speaker Hub and Journey to the Cloud. You also introduced me to Azure AI Show. It gave me an opportunity to showcase, my knowledge with others on those platforms. That was huge because I think for me, I was so focused on the end users, sharing and because I'm in a lot of the administrative groups, on LinkedIn, and I share my knowledge, but I didn't really have that balance of IT professionals following me and sharing my information with other IT folks. So that was huge that that I actually learned from you, right? Is to really connect with people and collaborate on their shows and sharing your knowledge. And from that, I know that my followership grew, and I'm pretty sure it played a part in becoming an MVP as well. And I do remember hearing someone sharing um, going to the forums on tech community, right?
Yes. Yeah,
Tech
you've done a
community is
ton
huge,
there.
right?
Yeah.
And because I know I go there and answer a lot of people's questions about, Outlook or Teams or any of those apps and services, and actually post articles on there as well. So take a look at techcommunity.com. There's many, many, many forms on there that you can contribute to and even write different articles if you like. I know that Frank does that as well.
Yeah.
He has a
I
lot of
know they
articles.
even have a ability on that platform that there's so many different places that you can contribute. But I know in tech community they also have a speakers um I guess form that you can fill out and apply to be a speaker for user
Mm,
groups. But there's many different places that people
mhm.
can find speakers or that can advertise, hey, I have an event and I'm looking for speakers. Like instead of finding the speakers, let the speakers find you.
Right,
Um,
right,
Lots of different ways to share your gift and get connected with people. And like you said, don't necessarily connect with just people that have the same either gift or
right,
interest or focus from a Microsoft perspective. We have, like you said, Azure. We're both in Microsoft 365 apps
right.
and services. There's security folks. I mean,
Mhm.
there's tons of categories too.
And I think that leads me into my next slide. What are all the different categories? And like I said, you and I happen to be in the Microsoft services and apps. Again, that's Loop, that's Outlook, that could be PowerPoint, Excel is another huge one. So think about all the different apps are as available to you. And then business applications, I believe that involves Power Automate and the Power Apps. Again with the A- Azure AI show, Cena is really, she always showcase her um, knowledge around the Power Automate in the business applications. So yeah,
Yes,
so I won't read all the ones that you see on the slides, but there are many, many subcategories under each one of these. So, and I don't know if that's public. I don't know if they have that information public. I know I went and did a search and found the categories, but I didn't see all the subcategories to go with them. So I
I
don't
did
think
a
that
s-
information is public.
I did a search for so on the mvp.microsoft.com site, you can search for people and you can put in filters. And I heard somebody say there was a Microsoft Apps and Services Copilot, and I
Mhm.
put that in specifically. I think I typed it in,
Mm,
and it showed up as like a category or a filter, but nobody
okay.
shows up with that subcategory award or whatever. So
Yeah.
sometimes it'll become a subcategory, like you mentioned,
Hmm.
and sometimes like security used to be lumped under, I believe, Azure as well as AI. And they decided those are large enough categories now to qualify for the award, in and of themselves. And
Hmm.
then in many of these, I think in the categories, all of the contributions that fall under that category show
Hmm.
up. So I was originally thinking about Windows and devices, because I grew up using Microsoft
Right.
Windows.
Right.
But the challenge there is I use my phone, which isn't a Windows phone anymore. I
Mm,
use a Mac computer. I have tablet devices. I've got all sorts of things that aren't running Windows. So
mm.
Microsoft Apps and Services includes SharePoint and Teams and the things that run on all these devices cross-platform. So it seemed like a better place to share all of my gifts as opposed to just the things that involve Windows.
Yeah. I was curious about the Internet of Things. So because I'm wondering where they're gonna put Microsoft Designer, right? Is that gonna be I don't see that as an app part of apps and
I,
services.
I
So
think
I'll
it
be
may
curious.
fall, yeah, it may fall under apps and services,
Mhm.
and may or may not be considered like a full app. Like I think Sway is officially under apps and services, but I'm not aware of anybody
Right.
that just does Sway
Yeah,
and
right.
has been awarded. I
Right,
do have a
right.
friend that works with me as Smarter Consulting, and he is known for talking about being a whiteboard
Yeah.
MVP. And I don't think whiteboard is a category just yet, but it's obviously an app that Microsoft has, and it integrates with Teams as well as standalone.
And it's all about really it's all about promoting their applications, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
maybe, correct me if I'm wrong here, Dan. It's really you volunteering, you're not making money from it. You're volunteering, to promote their products, right? And no, I don't believe I have on the screen here. I'm pretty sure there's a MVP for partners as well. Is that correct?
I don't know if there's a partner category, but
Hmm.
there are a number of MVPs that work for Microsoft partners
Right.
because sometimes
Mhm.
that makes it easier, even though you're not getting paid for it and it's not your day job. If you work for a Microsoft partner, such as I have done and I've worked for Microsoft, you have an opportunity to kind of discuss and do things either with the community, maybe after your day job or at your lunch, or some partners will support like user groups or
Mhm.
conferences. So you might go to a conference and realize your employer is sponsoring. So I don't think there's anything official for partners. And there's also regional directors. I know a few regional directors,
Mhm.
but I'm not exactly certain on all the distinctions. I have been told by Sharon Weaver that one of the distinctions is you're cross these categories
Right.
and you're a business leader.
Okay. And they can be an MVP and a region. Well, the only way to be a regional manager, a regional director, they have to be an MVP.
I believe it's
You can't be one without the other.
yeah, I'm not sure if you can be just a regional director. I think most regional directors are MVPs in something.
Hmm.
Sharon, I know, was a regional director before she became an MVP.
Oh, interesting.
But
Okay.
the regional director, I know you have to be nominated by a current regional director or I
Hmm.
believe a Microsoft employee.
Employee.
And there's very few, much less regional directors than MVPs. So with MVP, that's changed over time, but you have to be nominated by an MVP. There's over 3,000 worldwide, or a Microsoft employee. There's hundreds of thousands probably of people that qualify under the Microsoft employment. And
And I know
um,
I know that
go
I
ahead.
know that sorry to interrupt you, but I do
No,
know that a Microsoft employee cannot be an MVP. And if
yes.
once they leave Microsoft, that um they have to wait 6 months or to a year.
I think it's
A
officially a year
year.
is the written policy of if you leave Microsoft, it has to be a year before you can be. I don't think the nomination is stopped, but you don't get awarded for a year. And several people that I've known that have been MVPs. I know somebody that started a week ago at Microsoft and
Mm,
gave up the MVP, became
right.
an MVP alum because of their full time employment by Microsoft.
That goes into our next slide. Our next secret is, what is the process to get nominated? The nomination jingle. And you mentioned already a little bit that you have to be nominated by a Microsoft employee or another MVP. So again, here's that opportunity to start networking. Again, for me, I followed all you guys, a lot of the MVPs, but I never really was collaborating or networking with MVPs. And so that's really important to start to connect and network with existing MVPs, because now you're showcasing what you can do, and hopefully they nominate you. Or there's been people who asked to be nominated, because I wasn't sure if what was the protocol. Could you actually ask someone that you know as an MVP to be nominated? What are your thoughts around that? Because I know that before I became MVP, I toyed around that thought.
Yeah,
And I never did,
the
by the way. I never did ask, but
the
I toyed with the thought.
the interesting thing about that is asking or being nominated is super, super simple. Like just asking somebody to nominate you. Matthew Brown, who we started the Microsoft Speakers Club at the time and the Journey to the Cloud online events. Matthew asked me about, hey, would you be willing to nominate me? That's the easy part. It's filling out like 2 or 3 sentences. The hard part is Matthew then has to go back and document everything he's done community related for the last 12 months.
Mm,
So the nomination, I would say, and whether you ask for it or you wait for somebody to um, realize your contributions, is the easy part. The more difficult part is thinking back and documenting if you
yeah.
don't already have that somewhere.
Yeah. And that goes into the next one I pulled up already, that once you are nominated, that you complete this form. And when I was on that cusp of the old form and the new form, so they have a new form this year, and I filled out both of them, and they are significantly different, because the questions that you have to answer are different. And let's talk about how you provide your contributions, because again, um, for me, I'm a content creator, and so I had over 100 something videos. Do not list all 100 videos. Only list what has the highest impact with end users or with your audience, right? So what I did was kind of said, I produced 100 videos. Here are the top 5 that really had high impact. So list your high impact. And if I remember, because the form changed, you only can list 12 now, right?
It's 24 high impact, but you
Right.
can have more
Mhm.
contributions listed.
Yeah.
So
And
Teresa,
up
to
to
your
a thousand.
point, yeah,
And it was up to 1,000 characters. So I
yes,
remember actually, okay, here is my top 5. I gave them, key information and any other background around the other videos within that 1,000 characters. So yeah, they, like I said, I was thinking, I am not gonna list all 100 of these videos, and I had other things to contribute to as well, right?
yeah. And whether that's videos or you have a monthly or a weekly show or user group
Blog
or
posts,
blog posts,
right?
thinking through that, like
Mhm,
once I find your blog, I can figure out like how often
mhm,
you've blogged, or I find your YouTube channel, I can see what maybe your popular videos are.
right.
So thinking about here's where I'm active and here's some highlights about that activity. I do a weekly show, but we had, 37 drone experts that were all
Right.
women that we invited to one of those shows. That might be a
Mhm.
high impact activity because you've just reached across technology to a completely different tech industry and hosted that in Microsoft Teams.
What would you say is considered as high impact? Like, is not just the number of people, which is one of them, the number of people that attended or visited or, read your information. But what would be another way to describe high impact?
Yeah, I believe in my renomination. So before the new form with the 24 high impact, they asked for it was either in like a paragraph or a question about listing a couple high impact activities. And one that I listed was a conversation that I had with Dick's Sporting Goods. And Dick's Sporting Goods was using a lot of the Teams features from an accessibility perspective. And one of the features they wanted to use more was the captioning and live transcription features. And whether they were in Teams or PowerPoint, they ended up noticing that Dick's as a word doesn't show up. It doesn't show up in the transcript that I'm looking at in Teams. It
Mm,
shows up as a bunch of asterisks because it's considered something that could be,
offensive.
especially plural, could
Right,
be a bad word or
right.
an offensive word. And so if you say Dick's Sporting Goods, and I can see that right in the live transcription that I'm looking at, that shows up now because it's been put in as a proper noun. So I
Mm,
considered that high impact. It was finding out through Lori Potmeyer, who's the
mm,
Microsoft 365 apps and services MVP lead from Microsoft. I asked Lori, I'm pretty sure it's not you, but I need somebody from either Teams or PowerPoint or Azure, whatever the correct category is, on where does this stuff get translated
right,
and where is that list of words that are considered obscene or profanity or all of the above. And
right.
she put me in touch with those people. It became public before June, so I was able to list that as a high impact activity.
Okay, that's a great example because I don't think people would have thought that that would have made a difference or was considered as high impact. But you have to, once you're nominated, you fill out the form, you put all this information in there, and then um, we talked about adding all your high impact contributions, and then the next thing that you would do is wait for the review. Right. I meant to mention completing the form probably going to take you an hour or two to really think about answering the questions and putting all your uh, events and your contributions in. So factor on spending some time there, and then you're going to submit it. And they say within 90 days that they will respond. And I know here in the U.S. that I think people usually informed around the first of the month, and I'm not sure about other regions, but seems like because I remember you used to track all the MVPs and share it with people on Twitter, and it's usually at the beginning of the month when you were sharing that information.
Yeah, I have scheduled posts that I'm not sure if they need to be either adjusted or if it's less than once a month now, but a lot of times at the first of the month I'd start seeing the hashtags being used and the people putting a screenshot of their congratulations, you've been accepted or your nomination's been reviewed and you've been awarded the MVP in a certain category, and then you have to accept the award as well. So the first time I was nominated, I got feedback that I was on too many categories and I really needed to focus.
Good point.
The second
Good
time I
point.
was nominated, I had to turn it down because I was starting at Microsoft on
Oh,
my second time as a full-time employee. So instead of waiting for the people that have to do the review and have to speak to other people and probably write up something, I don't know what all is involved in that process. I reached out to my community manager and let them know that I was starting at Microsoft. So kind of ignore my nomination or, don't worry about it because I'm not going to be qualified.
I want to circle back because I'm glad that you mentioned it. It's really I guess I shouldn't say really important, but think about narrowing that category down. Like I remember I was on a call just at the beginning of the month with Sharon Weaver, and she was sharing that that's one of the things that she liked about me is that I'm focused on SharePoint, I mean on Outlook and Microsoft Teams right now. So it's not trying to, be the expert in all the different categories. And so that's one of the learnings is that you don't have to spread your expertise across all of the different platforms. So I'm glad that you mentioned that because that's important.
Yeah, if all of the different things you do fall under one category. So if I had done things with Windows running on Surface and Windows running on Lenovo and HP and Dell and all of the OEM partners, that's okay. They don't care if it's across different types of devices or different Microsoft 365 apps. What they're concerned about is if you're doing a little bit in AI, a little bit in IoT, Internet of Things, and then you're doing a little bit with security, you're less likely to have any one of those three teams that is essentially awarding you the MVP in that category, finding your contributions that impactful if they're all over in
I
four or
I
five of
would
those
if
categories.
if it was a real high impact, it wouldn't matter. I would list it. I
Yeah,
would
yeah.
encourage you to list it for sure, right? And but yeah, and think about that, having that one or two focus areas. And
There are there are rock stars in our industry like Kat Norton. Kat went viral on both
Excel.
Instagram and yeah, and
Mm,
TikTok on Excel. Like just really creative tips and tricks, thousands and then millions of followers. And I met her at the MVP summit. That
did you?
was one of those opportunities to just, kind of look at somebody that you've seen from afar
Right.
and have a short conversation. She was leaving, so it wasn't a long conversation, but I did give her one of my Oreo PowerPoint designer cookies. So hopefully she remembers me. Oh, the guy with the cookies.
Yeah, 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 yeah. But yeah, the other thing I want to ask Dan is this year they had closed the nomination panel. I think it was what, June, July timeframe. Is that normal, or was it just this year because they were developing a new Microsoft MVP portal?
Great
So
question. The program, I believe, is on its 30th anniversary. And I believe as you look over that time, there have been all sorts of changes with time frames and expectations and, when you can be renominated or re-awarded, I guess is the correct word. So for me, I was awarded in February of 2022, and the June July timeframe was in 2022, like 5 months later, was my skip um, renomination. I didn't have to do
mhm,
anything special. I was still considered an MVP for 2023. But then in June of this year, and the dates were earlier than that, maybe April was
mhm,
communicated to us. You have to have everything locked for the review, and then you'll find out in July. So we had
mhm,
like a 3 month window where they said, have everything in, have everything documented, and then wait, just like you do with your nomination, up to 90 days. You may or may not hear in that 90 days. Some people find out quickly. Some people kind of have to knock on the door or reach out to their community manager to see, like, hey, were there any questions for me, or what's going on with the process. um, that's what happened to me. Was I spoke to my community manager, Betsy Weber, and she said, oh, I think everything's going to be done by the end of the year, like November, December timeframe. We were talking in October, and I said, with the holidays, you don't think, oh, I don't think that'll impact anything. And January rolls around, and sometime in probably January, I had somebody renominate me because I thought, maybe it hadn't gone through. And then on February 1st, I found out, I became an MVP. So sometimes just figuring out the timing of that, or the stipulations or the changes What I found out was the high impact activities, if you check them as an MVP, they become public. So I
Mm,
don't want to check anything where I'm working on the super secret Microsoft What's Next as high
mm,
impact, even though it might be very impactful. That triggers it to become a public contribution.
mm. That's good to know. And so the one thing that I took away from your response as well is, once you become an MVP, you still have to work at it, right? You still have to contribute. It's not just an automatic rollover. You will be evaluated again, and that goes into the last one is just getting the results within those 90 days. Tip secret number 5, a sack full of benefits, right? So what do you get? You get, one, recognition and credibility from the community. I could tell you that my followership between my YouTube channel and LinkedIn skyrocketed in September, right? So I was, got my information, the results in early September. I happened to be at a conference, a couple days after what we was at the CollabCon conference, and like I said, watching my followership just to grow, different Microsoft resources and networking with other MVPs and who is experts in their area, exclusive events and conferences. I know that Ignite just kicked off. I know there was one prior to that that was pretty much for MVPs and regional directors. Um, Content feedback. You have access to give them feedback on products or services that they're going to roll out. That's really great. Personal and professional growth, and again, that global diverse community, right? Just a lot of resources and tools that you will have access to.
And I know with some of those resources, sometimes Microsoft finds you as an MVP, and sometimes they just give you the opportunity to join the calls from the product teams, talk about what they're thinking about, and then get your feedback on, hey, we're thinking about changing this in PowerPoint. What's your feedback on that? And you have an opportunity to actually change the way products are either rolled out or work. And that can be in a very specific use case, like I shared earlier, or
I
it can
think
be
I
something
think
that
the key
impacts
word is
everybody.
influence, though. We don't
Yeah,
make the decisions, we can just
right.
influence.
True. I don't
Yeah.
have any credits for writing any Microsoft code at this point, but
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
somebody else may have had to tweak something
Yeah,
in the
we
background.
I don't want, end users knocking at my door thinking that I can make a change. No, we can influence change just like you can influence change by giving feedback. Right. So the only thing different is that they may reach out to us and say, "What are your thoughts on this?"
Right.
Thanks. And then they make the decision. That's fair to say.
Yes.
Okay. Slay the podium by mastering public speaking. So, with that, what I want you to think about is there is a gala of speakers, right? So just think about you can, people sometimes think that speaking is about being at a podium. That is not true. You are really some type of speaker, even if you're writing, you're an author, blogger, you know, broadcasting, that podcast broadcasting is becoming huge, even before the podium, right? And live events or trainers, some type of form of speaking. And what all of these have in common is that they have to speak with confidence, and so we're going to provide you with some secrets and some tips that, may help you along. And I could tell you, I'm still, always working on my public speaking skills. Sometimes I find, did you just hear that? Those filler words is something that I'm still working on.
That's hard to
So
turn off. It's probably the
exactly.
hardest thing to turn off is listening to that. And that's one thing I notice is if I don't notice filler words, that means that I was that engaged. Like I haven't
Mm-hmm.
heard you say one time in 45 minutes. And
Hmm.
that's because I've been interested in the topic enough that I'm not thinking about all of the words, and if there are any either filler words that you'd consider or anything else.
Some people catch on to that and they'll ticker. They tick every time you use them. And my filler words is because it's natural for me. So right. Okay. Joyful tales of storytelling. So it's really important to be able to, tell a story when you are presenting and talking about a topic. All of them are going to have a start, middle, and end, just like a recipe, right? Think about, having a recipe right before you grade cook. You need your ingredients, you need to cook it, and then you're going to eat it. And that's how you should set up your storytelling. Prep, practice, practice, practice. I know that whenever I used to do webinars all the time, I would get in front of my two dogs who has passed away already, and I would practice in front of them. They would just look at me like this, but nevertheless, I would practice because sometimes when you writing your script, that it's good for writing, but not when you're speaking. And so you may have to change your script a little bit for a conversation versus a written piece. You want to add anything there, Dan?
I think one thing that I had not thought of, especially about presenting, was the just viral kind of, or default feeling I have when people read their slides. And
Hmm.
if you've written your slide, it's what you want to say.
Hmm.
But one thing that occurred to me as we talk about accessibility is if you think about closing your eyes or only listening to this video and screencast, you can't see what's on the slides.
Right.
So thinking about, especially as we look at different modalities or different ways of presenting, the slides may or may not be viewable, or the person may or may not be able to hear what is being said. If I'm on my phone and I'm in a public place or on a plane and I don't have a headset, I can't listen to something blaring out of my phone. They've started making those announcements on planes now. So you might have to use closed captioning to get a sense
Hmm.
for what's happening.
And I think that's why a lot of people actually use bullet points versus writing their script. And I do a combination of both. Sometimes I will write the whole script out because I may set my presentation on the shelf. And then 6 months later, I need to, use that same presentation again. I kind of have my thoughts sitting there. And I have done both. But nevertheless, practice, actually speaking and talking through your presentation. Know your audience. It's really important to know what their interest is, what their expectation that they want to give. Be mindful for what region. I know that I am starting to do a lot of presentations in Nigeria, and I'm here in the US. Some of the things that, is relatable to us here in the US, they may know nothing about. So make sure you know your audience before you present.
I know we've had international audiences, and Jeremy Beal from Microsoft mentioned that, maybe saying hello world or something global greetings or global
Right.
hello might be a quicker way than saying good morning, good afternoon, good
Mm.
evening, wherever you are in the world. It's less words and it's
Right.
still acknowledging the same thing from your audience.
Body language. So, body language is important. Watch your face expressions, have direct eye contact, even if you're virtual. Make sure you have good posture when you're there. Now, body language, you can also use body language to convey your message, right? So let's say that you're talking and something sarcastic, right? You want to give them that, what are your thoughts, right? Because you want people to engage with you and use your body language to help you. What you don't want to do is just stand there and be frozen. That could be against you as well. So think about it. I know that I won't have any problems with that because I'm always a little bit more expressive, probably more than what I need to be.
I had somebody at the Microsoft Windows Vista launch mention that I looked like a caged lion on stage because it was a wide auditorium of about 5,000 people. And naturally, I felt like I wanted to connect with the audience, but it looked like when I wasn't demoing at the computer where I had to
Mhm.
stand still behind a podium, I was kind of pacing back and forth, looking at both sides of the audience.
Mm.
And somebody said, "You look like a caged lion up there."
One of the things, I mean, you mentioned that one of the things that when I went through trained or training sessions is if you are by a podium, step away from behind it. Sometimes they feel like that what they said is, you might be using that to where it's not showing confidence. You're kind of hiding behind the podium. So if you need to change your slide, where is it? Have a clicker. This is a Logitech clicker. And so you can step beside it, but not necessarily hiding behind it. So keep that in mind.
Even a wireless keyboard can sometimes address that. I used to do that as a trainer if I didn't want to use a keyboard, or sorry, a clicker, maybe because I have to do some demos or typing. You could use a wireless keyboard and mouse and, move around the room or present from pretty much anywhere, not just from behind the podium.
The next one is engage and connect with your audience and control your nerves. I could tell you that in September, I had to present at the MCT conference, and my nerves got the best of me. There was nothing that I can do. I tried to, like, I always like to listen to my jazz music to bring me down before I have to speak. But for whatever reason, my nerves got the best of me and shake it off. The very next day, I had to present again and was fine. So think about, breathing, meditate, listen to calming music to try to calm your nerves. And so you can engage and connect with your audience because if you're nervous, they could see right through it. Right. And I remember at the MCT conference, they said, "How did you do?" I said, "I was nervous. I just couldn't shake it." And I actually be careful because you could actually hear it in your voice when you're actually really nervous. So watch that and try to figure what is that. And if you bomb, I don't want to use that word, but if you didn't do so well that time, shake it off and be ready for the next one.
There are situations where those butterflies or those nerves get the best of you. Some people thrive under that. I find myself wanting to make sure that I can connect with somebody that I feel comfortable with. And when you can take that pressure off yourself, especially with community contributions, these should be fun. These should be for people that you get to know and have common experiences with. But sometimes speaking to those people as like the authority or feeling like, I don't know as much as somebody in this room can give you those, butterflies, but figuring out how to deal with that and maybe pull the information out of those experts that are with you or acknowledge those expertise that you have in the room.
And then the last tip, I kind of talked about it a little bit, engage and connect with your audience, right? So that's the ultimate goal is you want that reaction with them. If you're virtual, encourage them to use their emojis, and to me that just fills me up. That's what pumps me up is seeing my audience engaged. And And don't force that engagement. I think that I did that once where I was trying to, because I had set my presentation for the interaction and they wasn't, and I kept asking for it. And I think that, it didn't go off very well if me kept asking for the engagement. So if you don't get it, just keep it moving. That was my learning from that, is that don't try to force the engagement. And so that's my learnings from that.
The benefit to having done something multiple times is I've had the same results, Teresa, where you have one group that's highly engaged, the
Mm,
time flies, you may not even have time for everything that you had planned to communicate because it's just so engaging back
right.
and forth. And then you have the opposite where you have an hour and you're half an hour in and you're already through your content because nobody will give you feedback. Sometimes figuring out what are the stories from either previous opportunities or like we've told here, just different anecdotes can help you with, okay, I've got a really quiet audience. Maybe I'll just share things that other audiences
Right.
or
Right.
participants have shared.
Yeah, have a backup when you have to have fill in time, so definitely think about that. Hey, resources, jolly resources. So read and observe others, right? That, you may see Dan's style of presentation, way he presents and how he stand in front or how he does his broadcasts or videos, that, learn from them to kind of develop your own style. I know that when I started doing my videos, I did just that. I liked um, Laura, who is really big in the SharePoint space. She went by Laura. Who was it? Laura
Um,
Wonder or something.
Wonder, yeah.
Yeah,
Wonders of
and
SharePoint or something.
something like that. Yeah, I watched her way she would. Everybody watches Leah, who is another Excel expert. Kevin was another one that he did a variety of Microsoft videos. So I will watch them and then kind of developed my own style. Actually, it took me about a year before I really comfortable with the way my brand. So read and watch others. On LinkedIn, there is some public speaking learning groups that we follow, but Dan and I both follow. Dan, tell them a little bit about it, because it's about, they give you an article and then they want people to contribute to. I think that is something really neat that LinkedIn is doing.
Yeah, LinkedIn just rolled out a AI, um, they call it collaborative articles. And we've been working with somebody in our community from India that doesn't have the ability to contribute to
Mm,
these collaborative articles. But whatever switch or thing that Microsoft switches allows you to take the skills that you're passionate about that you can list or that you can follow, and they offer up these collaborative articles for you to provide your perspective. And what I used to do was find these in presentations or public speaking and fill out all of the different like perspectives they were looking for. So they
hmm.
typically have a paragraph or two. AI
Right.
generates that. It may be ideal or it may be a little off. Sharon Conley found one that was obviously AI generated and not maybe
Fact
properly
checked.
properly fact checked, and just gave the feedback of, hey, I think this is what they were meaning, but it's obviously not exactly what the prompt was. So her perspective was correcting or resetting some of the AI generated content. Now they stop you and just want your perspective on a few different things in the article as opposed to just every stop along the way. And if you get comments and reactions based on your perspective for at least 3 articles in, I
Hmm.
think, a month or 3 months, they award this community contribution for collaboration.
I
And
think
then
I
it can be
found
in
a
a
few.
particular court area.
I like reading them. I watch for them, and 'cause it's great content, and I've contributed to a few as well.
Cool.
And There is, like I said, I know around public speaking. I think I heard you say around presentations too.
Yeah. So the more of these skills that you provide your perspective on, I know a few people that have several of these different leadership, personal branding. There's over 100 skills that you can have a top contributor in these areas or these skills, but you can have multiple if you're contributing to a lot of different topics. I tried to hone in on one or two topics that I was most passionate about, but there's things around collaboration and software and engineering and leadership. If you think about it, you probably can find a category.
For sure. The last one I added was Dan and I are part of the Microsoft Speakers Hub, and our newsletter, we usually put tips in there as well. So just follow us on LinkedIn.
And on LinkedIn, the rebranding of that was your idea. And I think we debuted that in September too.
Yeah, a lot been going on.
Yes.
Magic toolkit. So the last secret for to share with you guys is think about the tools that you may be using, and with PowerPoint, and that's what you see here today, is use your speaker notes. I was surprised by a lot of people who don't include the speaker notes, and I'm going to try to pull this over. And Dan, let me know if you can see this because I'm going to show it. Do you see both?
Yep. Yep. I see both.
So this is presenter view, and I put my notes in here. My bullet points. I actually go as far as this is part of me growing with my public speaking. I may remind myself to slow down. I may tell myself to smile more. Um, Sometimes you get so caught up in your presentation and start speaking too fast that I would, put those little notes in there to remind me. If you use in animation like I've used throughout this presentation, I will tell myself when to click, so I know exactly when to do so. And so, like I said, use the speaker notes. It's there for your advantage. And the nice thing about it is no one sees it but you. That's what it's all about. The other one is up down, just talked about the two of them together. So the user presenter view and use the speaker notes.
I love how the
Rehearse.
presenter view shows you the next slide too. So
Yes,
as a
it.
presenter in the
Mhm.
past, sometimes you'd get surprised by, oh, I forgot that slide's in between the thing I thought was next. Presenter view shows you what that next slide is in the upper right.
I'll bring it back over.
Yeah.
So a couple things about this is you can do a couple things is you can make just right. You can also make this smaller. So if you don't need to see what your next slide is, because you may have your notes, real long here, you can make these small. And for my old eyes, I need to make them big.
And they told me at one point in the PowerPoint group that you can now add notes while you're presenting.
That
So,
is that is was the best ad.
yes,
That
because what
is
happens when you're presenting, somebody has a question, you think, oh, I wish I had that in my notes.
mhm, mhm.
Now you can add it to your notes while you're presenting.
Yeah, I use it especially when I'm practicing and I want to make a change, that I make the change right here. So really nice. Why I'm here, because the next one is on the rehearse with coach, which we have to, that's only available online, and I'll show you that in a second. But here's some great tools when you're in the presenter view. You have access to your pointer, laser pointer. So you can actually use that to point, and you at least see in your presenter view what you're pointing at. You also, Dan, this is Dan's favorite. Dan is always using it to write on the screen. That's pretty bad. And you can actually erase it. Let me see if I can get back to it. When you turn it off, it's going to ask if you want to keep it or not. Oops, go back. Oops.
There's an
Here's the
eraser,
eraser.
erase all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can erase it, and does give you an option. Couple other tips here. You can look at all your slides by clicking on that, this little icon here, if you need to zoom. So let's say you want to zoom on this area, you can. You can move it around if you want to focus on a particular area. The control minus will also help you with that.
That was
And
always my number one complaint, was when people put up slides that are too busy and they
mhm,
say, I know you can't see this, but, and I think, why don't you zoom in on your slide?
right. This one, if you need to switch between something that is confidential and you don't want them to see it, you can temporarily turn this to just a all black screen and turn it back on. This is if you are actually going to be presenting and globally and want your sub captions on, you may want to turn that on, and it's going to actually capture what I say on screen. And it's really important that you really think about that, especially if you are speaking regionally. And you can easily turn that off. Just adjust the camera. And then you have some other tips there. And let me take you to the online. This is PowerPoint online. Here you will see under slideshow, rehearse with coach. It's gonna pop up here. Right again, click on it. Come on. There we go. So you can start rehearsing, and what this is going to do, for me, I don't like to show real-time feedback because it distracts me, but you can actually practice your speech, and as you talk, it's going to monitor your tone and your level and how many ums and so's and more filler words is because it's going to capture that. I did that on purpose, folks. So let's go ahead and stop it. Hit cancel. And there it gives you your results here. So repetitive language. So it tracks your tone and it lets you know how well you do. I know that I've used this several times just to, get comfortable and practice with speaking more. And it is really nice to use. Again, it's only available on the online version of PowerPoint and not the desktop. And why I'm here, I wanted to share with you on create.microsoft.com. If you need any type of templates, for presentations, you can use these. Microsoft has a lot of presentations that you can download and use. And that's again, on create.microsoft.com. If I go back to the home page again, just keep in mind, you have Microsoft Designer where you can create social media posts. Think about being a speaker. You might want to post on LinkedIn and social medias. You have, Clipchamp, which is videos. This is new, Dan. I didn't realize they added Loop on here now.
Yeah, it's generally available. So I guess that
Yeah.
may have been the time. I haven't seen if it's been there before, but yeah.
So those are a few little tips for you when it comes to tools. And the conclusion, and for our last Santa's secret is for existing and expiring MVPs, you want to just be passionate. All this is about having passion for any of the Microsoft's apps and services, and what they have to offer. You want to just contribute at the maximum level. You want to be exceptional, as well as being a visionary. You are a leader, right? You are sharing your knowledge with others and helping them get along, through their day. I always like to say, simplify your day all day, every day, and being a maximizer. Again, just giving your contribution unconditionally to help others. That is your journey to becoming a Microsoft MVP. Dan and I, we thank you for joining us. Oops, try this again. Dan and I, we thank you for joining us. Hope you found this helpful. Leave any questions or comments that you have in the comments below, and we will address them. And happy holidays to you.
Happy holidays, everyone.